Hi there, everyone. Cameron Morrissey coming to you again live with another management and leadership Q&A session. Starting off this week, I figured everybody might have some questions and some concerns as they've been going through their week. And we'll go ahead and get those squared away for you on this particular session. If you want to know about these in the future, for those of you that are coming in a little bit late to this, we're doing this today at 1 o'clock Pacific time on Monday. If you're coming to this late, it's a great session. Go ahead and listen to the questions. You'd be surprised how many of them apply to every single leader that's out there. But you can also go to my Facebook page and just subscribe in the events section of my Facebook page. Nothing too crazy, doesn't blow up your newsfeed or anything, just drops in some notifications for you so you know when these sessions are. Because I really want these to be a great resource for everybody. I want people to be able to come to these throughout the course of their week and kind of ask those questions that have proven to be little stumbling blocks as the week has gone on. So as those people jump on board, let me know where you're tuning in from. I always like to see where everybody's coming from. Hey, sweets. It's also good for everybody else to know that the leadership problems and the management questions that you have aren't unique to you. They're things that people face around the world. Leadership is a very common struggle because you have to deal with people and differing priorities, and it's nice to just be a part of a community. So as you come on, let me know where you're calling in from, and I'll be looking for the first question for today. I like to start these off with some questions I didn't get to last session, and one of the best ones that I got that I didn't get a chance to get to was, how do you deal with two employees who are having an interpersonal conflict? How do you get them to work together? How do you deal with that conflict? Hey Dina, good to see you again. And I prefer to handle conflict in a very transparent way. I don't like to beat around the bush. I like to bring two people in and start discussing it. 90+% of the problems that your team is going to have with each other are the result of misunderstandings, where they are perceiving things differently than how the other person is intending it. Brandy, good to see you here as well. So you want to just bring those two people in and give each of them a chance to explain what it is that is frustrating them. And so what you want to do is you want to just give each individual person their time. Don't let anybody interrupt them. And then you translate it for them. So the first person goes and discusses what is frustrating them about the issue. And then the other person goes and discusses what's frustrating them about the issue. You can then ask clarifying questions as to what they actually wanted to see out of that. And what often happens is you'll see that people were trying to give their support in a way that the other person didn't want to hear. Or they were going for the goal. They thought they were doing the right thing, but it was misperceived. So much of that is just misunderstandings. The other thing, Pravina, Olive, good to see you here as well. The other thing, the other 10% is where they're not clear on what the overall team goals are. By bringing them in and having that discussion, you have a chance as the leader to reinforce the goals of your department, your organization. And if you can tie it all together, we are all working towards this particular common goal. If you can tie that together, it reinforces the goal and it makes sure that everybody knows that they're a part of the same team. There's nothing wrong with conflict. I actually very much enjoy a good-spirited conflict as long as we're all working towards the right thing. Debate, arguments, that sort of thing, that makes sure that only the best ideas and the best courses of action move forward, that spirited debate. So it's important that you have that, and it's important that you reinforce that. But bring them in, have that discussion. Hey Pranitha, good to see you again. Have that discussion with them, figure out what it is that's bothering them, and you'll often be able to translate that and see where they didn't mean to offend. They were trying to do the right thing and it just came off wrong, or it was perceived wrong. And you can be the mediator there, but give a chance to reinforce the goals as well. The second question is one that is a little bit more specific. I deal with a lot of questions in regards to motivating the staff. And I received a question in regards to a staff member that just seems to be going through a depression. Beyond just being demotivated, really just somebody who's depressed and maybe defeated as well. And I think the first step from a leadership perspective is that you step in and you let them know that you're there to help. You want somebody, that's the first lifeline for somebody who's going through a depression. They're not in this alone. You're there to help them through that and let them know that you're going to help get them through this and get to the other side, get to that successful place that they really want to be in their workday world. And so Go ahead and have that discussion, but then start noticing the things that they're doing right. We're way too hard on ourselves. I say a lot of times that leaders are focused on the problems, not on the successes that are going on, and that's why we tend to have more of a negative influence on our team, because we're noticing everything that's wrong so that we can fix it. But we also, as people, are really tough on ourselves as far as what we expect oftentimes. And so it's important that you as the leader are reinforcing that your individual team members are successful, that they're a success. When they do something right, notice what they're doing right. Raul, it's good to see you here as well from Puerto Rico. So you want to be that person that is giving them that boost up and noticing their successes when they aren't noticing them themselves, especially when we get to that point where we kind of get to that tipping point where we get too negative, and then all we are seeing is the things that are going wrong, and we're not noticing any of the things that are going right. It's important that you step in as a leader and be that person that can show them the way out of it. So Joey asked a question. It's been about one and a half years since we have felt like we are not a team. Do you think all hope is lost? And no, that sort of thing turns around on a dime, Joey. If you have felt that sense of teamwork with a team, I think that's a great foundation to actually come from. A lot of teams have never experienced that sense of fulfilling teamwork. So if you have that in your past, I think it's an easier point to reference as you look to move forward. You're able to fill that gap because people are more familiar with that feeling. What you just have to do is you have to find those teamwork things. You have to find common goals. What are you all working towards? What successes can you share? Teamwork is all about shared experiences. And we have those shared experiences constantly throughout our workday. However, we don't necessarily call those out and leverage those for teamwork. So work on shared goals with everybody. Work on working together on projects as much as possible. We try to make teamwork into this amazingly elusive thing that we have to do, breakaway sessions over the weekend where we're doing ropes courses and we're out hiking in the woods and stuff like that. Teamwork is really very simple. Shared goals, shared experiences, shared successes, shared learning. So take tasks and don't do it alone. Do it with somebody else. If you're in the position of giving out tasks, don't give tasks out to one person. Give it out to 3 people at the same time and make them work together. You can go ahead and set that model up. But I really think the key for in a lot of cases is that success, because that's what people are really looking for. People want to be successful in life, and if you can show them success and you can show that in a team environment where everybody was contributing to it, I think you'll see those bonds start forming. It's not something that flips around overnight. There's no quick cure for it. But it's something that if you are methodical about going through it, then you're going to find ways to make teamwork more of a part of what you do on a day in, day out basis, and you'll see that teamwork in your team flourish a little bit more. Dina asked the question, how do you deal with associates who continually resist personal development? Dina, you can handle this a couple of different ways. The first one I'll tackle is you make it an expectation. If your expectation is that team members are continuing to learn and continuing to get better, then you have to write that in. If you expect their sales to be at $1,000 a day, when they first come in the door, but you want to see 10% increases every quarter, then you have to write that into the expectations. Now, I will jump back to this here in a second, but I did want to handle the caveat to that, and that is a lot of people don't want to develop personally. They're very happy with what they do on a day in, day out basis on the job, and then they go to their personal life and they seek fulfillment there. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of fantastic leaders that are at the line level of organizations, but they're very happy to be at the line level, and that's what they find personally fulfilling. However, if it's something that is an expectation, then you have to write that in, and you have to let them know that that's what is going to be expected going forward. And if they don't develop, then that means they're falling behind, and there needs to be repercussions to that too. And then what you do is you lay out the ways that they can personally develop and get involved, Dina, as much as possible. Get involved. I know I've mentioned this, I think, to you specifically before, but get involved with them in their personal development and make it a team effort that you want to work towards, and spend that little bit of time. Where you spend your time is where your employees are going to see that you where you find importance. So if you spend your time developing them, they're going to see that that's an important thing to you, and they're going to likewise mirror that and make that more important in their own lives. But that would be one of my big recommendations there. Charlene, good to see you again, and Wesley, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Another issue that we dealt with is somebody who doesn't see their faults. And so it was an issue that came up in last session, where an individual refuses to see what their faults are. And what you need to do is, it's great that they have that confidence. First of all, that's one thing that you don't want to mitigate. When you bring this up to them, you don't want to diminish any confidence that they have out there. You want that confidence, but you want it to be directed in the right way, and you want to get logical about it. You don't want it to just be kind of delusional confidence. So get specific on what it is that they're failing at. Find specifics and bring them up in a timely fashion. Feedback matters based on specifics and based on timeliness. It loses its importance, it loses its value the more time that goes by and the less specific it is. So get very specific, get very timely with your encouragement of them. Notice when they're doing things right, but also maybe start throwing in when they're doing things wrong. That's what you want to do on that. And so it's not something that they get defensive about. It's not something that they find uncommon. It's just something that's in the regular course of a leadership conversation that you're having with them. But specifics. That's the real key to giving that feedback and breaking through to those people that aren't seeing a problem. Another way that I've actually done this before, it's been a real eye-opener for, in particular, veteran employees, those that have a huge amount of experience, is when you do some sort of contest or, throw up some metrics that are out there, sales, calls answered, orders shipped, that sort of thing. And the veterans can see in context how they perform. Now you can put up names up there, you can put it up on a board, hey, our sales goal is $100,000 this month, and this person has contributed this much. And you can put names up there. If you want to be more sensitive about it, you can use employee numbers or some sort of code that's out there. But if you throw those up there on a board where it's public knowledge and where they can see where they rank, it can be a very big eye-opening experience. I've had employees in the past who have just thought they're the cat's meow, and all of a sudden they find out that they're in the bottom half of performing employees, and it's a real shock to them. Hopefully they have the sense of pride where they look to hone their craft, they look to get better, and it becomes a motivating thing, and that's important that you step in and do that. But that's one way that you can break through to people, is show how they're doing in context. A lot of times they think they're doing great, and regardless of how much you say, no, you need to improve, they think, that's the canned line that you give everybody, that they need to improve. But when they see that they're in the bottom half, it's like, whoa, hold on, I really do need to improve. So be specific, be timely with it, and if possible, throw it out there in context as well. That can be really fantastic for you. Dean, I'm glad you appreciate it. Cameron, great question, Cameron Anthony Daniel. I hope you're doing good. I hope you're doing good as well. Is it right to leave an organization when you do not see a career path and the office has a poor culture? Great question. My advice for everybody who's considering leaving an organization, it's not advice that I like to give, just because I don't always have all the details of it, and it's a risk that's out there. But there's two reasons to leave a company. You're not developing personally, you're not growing, you're not learning new things, you're not getting new experience. That's one reason. The other reason is career path. If you have no career path forward, then that's a very good reason to leave an organization. That's why actually I have left organizations in the past, is simply because there was no path forward. The person that was in that position wasn't going anywhere, and I didn't see a way forward. So those are the two reasons: not getting any experience, not growing personally, and then not having any sort of career path forward. So those are the reasons why. Culture, difficulties with your boss, those are all things that you can learn from and you can overcome. There's a lot of things that happen to us that are bad, that we dislike about our workplaces, that are actually very valuable for us to be in the middle of, so that we can learn how to deal with it and learn how to get past it, because a lot of these things aren't going away anytime soon. You are almost always going to have a problem with your boss. So dealing with a bad boss is something you have to learn to work with and still manage to perform at a very high level in your workday, to be able to move forward. And so, leaving because of a bad boss is something that's just going to create a domino effect where you're constantly leaving. So again, Career path, not developing personally. Those are the reasons that I look to move to a different organization. And Dina puts a great great point out there that I would like to put. What gets tracked gets done. There's an old maxim, I think, by Peter Drucker that says what gets measured gets managed. And that's an important point to bring out. If you want to manage something better, if you want to make it known to people, then you have to measure it. Find a way to measure it. There's always a way to do that in some way, shape, or form. You just have to get creative with it. Wesley asked my favorite, I'll call it my favorite question of the day because I'm starting to wrap things up on it. I do have a book coming out, another book coming out. It's going to be at the end of October is what I'm targeting right now. You'll hear more about that here in a couple of weeks. So I'm actually going to be asking for some peer reviews of the second, not rough draft, but the second draft of it. I want to get some feedback first before I go to the publisher with it. But you'll be hearing more about that in a couple of weeks, but it looks like the end of October I'm going to be having it. The working title is The Roadmap. So I'm excited about that coming out. Pravina asked the question, recognize in public but criticize in private is a must in leadership. I absolutely believe that is the general rule that should always take place, but I also think that it's important to recognize in private as well. It's important to have that one-on-one where it's not offhand, where you're not publicizing it, because it makes the criticism in private better later on. Many of us have had that boss where you know somebody is in trouble when they get called into the office. Your guard is up. That's the only reason you ever get called into a private conversation with your boss, and you don't want that to be the case. You want to be called in just as much for good things that are going on, that you've recognized it. And it's also a very personal experience when you're in a closed-in space with somebody and they're recognizing what you've done for the organization. So it's a very powerful way of doing that. Yes, you want to absolutely be recognizing and praising in public, but don't just criticize in private. You want to be recognizing and praising in private as well. Now, do you criticize in public? I'd say constructive criticism on certain things where it's not a personal attack or whether it's an area where a lot of people struggle. That's not something that should be necessarily avoided as well. Again, that feedback needs to be timely. And so a lot of times that'll take place. You want to be respectful, of course. You don't want some angry outburst in the middle of the place. That's horrible. But in general, yes, praise in public, criticize in private. However, that should be a general rule and something that you kind of wiggle around as situations warrant. So next question. For the one model office, Michelle, I'm not familiar with the model office concept. One thing that I do recommend, though, I'll talk about office concepts and office space. What I do believe in is I do believe in more shared workspaces and more flexible workspaces. There's a time to have a private workspace, a walled-in cubicle, whatever, to be able to really muscle down and get some work done. But there's an extraordinary amount of benefit from being able to overhear what's going on with teamwork and team members. So I'm a big fan of more open office environments. But even if you have a closed-in office environment, what I encourage people to do is regularly mix up where people are sitting. You would learn a lot from a different person. If you're sitting next to your best friend for 5 years, you're not learning as much as you would from the new person that just came on board 3 months ago, and they're not learning as much from you. So I am a big fan of mixing up the office environments a little bit more, so that people can learn, and you get that, they call it, the buzzword is collisions. Where you have more collisions where people interact a little bit more, and I think that's a great way to do it. And yes, Wesley, I am live right now, just so you know. Looking for some more questions out there. Anybody who's dealing with anything here on this Monday that you want to tackle, we can go ahead and do that right here. Another area that was addressed in the last session was in regards to dealing with the micromanaging boss. And my recommendation on dealing with a micromanaging boss is that you jump ahead of the micromanagement wherever possible. So what I mean by jumping ahead is that you offer updates. So instead of them standing over your shoulder, looking at everything that you're doing, take the task that they have for you and then offer to update them in another hour, 2 hours. Okay, great, I'll get to work on that. Is it okay if I come back at 1 o'clock and show you the progress that I've made on it? And then the other way to get ahead of it is to actually ask for more than one duty. Once you've done that update and they give you kind of the next bit of feedback, ask for more. Okay, so when I'm done with that, what should I do? You should do this. Okay, I'll go ahead and handle that, and then I'll bring it back to you at 4 o'clock today for you to take a look at. So again, you're trying to cut out the amount of time they spend over your shoulder and the amount of time that they're interrupting you. If you control when the updates are and you start taking more control over those tasks that they have, you can cut that down to a quarter of the amount of time that they spend micromanaging you. And then as you build up that level of trust, then the micromanagement should stop a little bit more. If you take that ownership over the task and you're updating them, it kind of flips the ownership model of it. And they start feeling a little bit better about delegating to you. But take control of updates, you manage the updates, and then start asking for more than just the next step on things. And that's a real help to that. Amir, it's good to see you here. Ask the question, how to deal with the Mr. No boss. We have all had great ideas that we've had that we take to our boss, we take to leadership, and they get shot down. And yes, I will put a lot of the onus on the leader who should be listening, who should be extracting, who should be looking for those innovative ideas that you have. They should be listening to their team and valuing what the team is bringing to them. And I mention that because you as a leader need to do the same thing for your team. A lot of us have Mr. No bosses. I like that term, by the way, Amir. A lot of us have Mr. No bosses, but we also then end up emulating the behavior and we become the no. So a few things that you can do to try to break through that no. And again, I want you to internalize these as well so you don't begin being that Mr. No boss for your people as well. A couple of things that you want to do is you want to be sensitive of the time that you're bringing it up. There is a right time and a wrong time to be bringing up your ideas. Stopping your boss while they're on their way to a meeting is not a good time to bring up their idea. Popping into their office when it looks like they've, have some office hours, for lack of a better term, and asking if they have a few minutes for you is a good way of getting the time and the attention that you need. So there is a good time to bring it up. You want to be sensitive to their time. A lot of the reason you get shot down all the time is time and priorities. What you're bringing to them isn't a priority to them, and they don't have time to listen to it or deal with it or coach you through it or otherwise manage the project. So you need to start tackling those areas. You want to have your stuff together, have practiced it before, have the points that you want to hit. You want to have the backup material. If they want to see a report, if they want to see a project plan, have that stuff ready so that when they say, well, I don't see how this is going to benefit us. Well, here's a spreadsheet that shows that an increase in this area by 3% will have this effect on the bottom line. Or I don't see how we get from A to Z to get that into completion. Well, here's the project plan and here's what's needed to get it done. That shows that you're serious about it. It also makes it easier for them to say yes to it, and it shows where they need to be resourced and where you need to, step in. The other thing is tackling their priorities as much as possible. A lot of the things are what is important to us and what we think is a great idea doesn't even hit their radar. They've got 5 things that their boss is bothering them about constantly on a day in, day out basis. And if what you have doesn't address those 5 priorities, if it's in number 6 or number 7 down here, then it's not going to get their attention. So make sure that you know what's important to them. What are the metrics they talk to you about? What is their boss hounding them about? What is a priority to them? And make sure that you answer the reason why what you're bringing to them addresses those priorities. If you address a problem that they have, then they are going to listen to you. The next thing is they don't have the time. So you need to take ownership over those ideas. When you get shut down with that no, make sure that they know that you're willing to take on the extra work. You're willing to see this through. This is an opportunity for you to gain experience and gain leadership. So you should be volunteering that. But make it easy for them. Show them how it is addressed. The last point that I'd like to make on dealing with priorities is also just knowing your audience. When you bring things to, say, a chief financial officer, if you're in a small company or you're high up in a large company, if you bring things to a chief financial officer, they don't want to hear about the revenue projections. All right, they've seen too many revenue projections and too many revenue projections that don't work out. What they want to know is what the cost projections are. That's why accountants are so manic about costs so much of the time, is because that's very definitive. What happens in the future with revenue, that's something that's a best guess or a logical guess, that sort of thing. So make sure that you're addressing that. If you bring something to your CFO, you need to address the costs and the cost mitigation and show how there is no risk in doing this because of whatever reason. So make sure you just know what your audience is important to your audience, and that will really help you out as much as possible. Hassam asked the question, how do you deal with extremely negative people in the team? I discount much of what they say. If it's a peer that I have to deal with who's excessively negative, oftentimes I just tune them out. Because they're going to see that the glass is half empty regardless of what is happening, regardless of whether the glass was empty yesterday and now it's half full, and that's progress. So a lot of times I just discount them. I also will shoot down their logical fallacies. A lot of negative people have a lot of preconceived notions and illogical thinking to make things negative. A lot of times when you reach that tipping point where you get into a negative frame of mind, then everything looks negative. And so point out to them the positive, the silver lining that's in the cloud, the fact that this is all going to be over in another day, in another week when this project is finished, and that we can move on from there. But try to give them some perspective. It's also a good way of reinforcing that within yourself, and that's kind of my 2 cents on that. Now, if you're dealing with a boss who is excessively negative, what you want to do is you want to be constructive wherever possible. Kind of how you mentioned the silver lining in the cloud. You may not mention that to your boss, but tell them what you're going to do about the situation, what you are doing about the situation. When we take action, we knock down those unknowns in the future. And that's a big benefit for us as far as the fear of the future, the fear of the unknown, the fear of things getting worse. If we can take action, we know what those action steps are, we're likely to be more positive about it because we're taking more control over things. So I get constructive when my boss is negative. When the people are negative, I just reinforce the why, and I reinforce this is the plan going forward. Again, people are often negative because they don't see what's going to happen down the line. They don't know that the change is going to be beneficial. They don't know what the future holds. So tell them what the plan is. Tell them what you see. Communicate with them more, and you'll be able to control that narrative that they might be having in their own head that's making them negative. But those are the kind of the tackling the subordinate, the peer, and the boss. That's how I tackle those particular areas. Praneeth asked the question, is there a preferred style or method of coaching a team member that is effective especially when delegating tasks? The most effective coaching methods are the methods that are personalized to the player. So every person has different motivations. Every person has different skills that you have. And so part of the difficulty of leadership is that there is no one way of doing things that's going to get the most from every single one of those individuals that's on your team. So you need to be flexible. A lot of people on your team are going to want the challenge. And so you just need to point them in a direction and say, go. Another group of your people may be just as capable, but are very tentative and very fearful of making a mistake. And so you have to work with them to show them the plan moving forward. But my big takeaway for you, Praneetha, is you want to be flexible with the team. Know each individual team member and what it is that motivates them and how to get the most out of them. And a lot of times it's simply just a matter of making a list of your employees and putting down next to the list what motivates them and how to get them to do something and excel at it, what they like to do. But just kind of give that some thought, and it'll be a little bit easier to coach them down the road. The other key is communication. Without a doubt, communicating what you want to see, what the end result is essential. The more you communicate with people, I like to say that there is no such thing as over-communicating in leadership, because if you don't think that you're over-communicating, you're not communicating nearly enough. And so that would be my other recommendation, is communication wherever possible. the other questions I've had a few here that popped in. How do you bring your people who were once performers and are now failing back on track? And Anna Marie, great question. What I do is I actually try to bring them in and I say, hey, here's your performance. You were up here and you can see from the metrics that you're doing this. If you have that metric history, that makes it much easier. Is there anything going on? How can I support you? What can I do to help you get back up to this particular level? And when you open it up like that, when you have an open-ended question, you'd be surprised at the direction sometimes that conversation takes. A lot of times it's a personal issue. So it's something that's happening completely outside of work. They're having family issues at home, and that's having an effect. Work-life balance works both ways. If you're having good time in your personal life, you're going to be happier at work, and vice versa. And so a lot of times you'll find out that it's a personal issue. And so you can ask how you can support that, if there's any flexibility that you can have to ease that sort of nervousness. But you also want to make sure that as things have evolved, they're evolving and your way of managing them is evolving as well. If you just open up that discussion, you can start delving into some of that. And a lot of times people don't know what it is that is causing that particular failure. And so it's a long-term thing where you can go ahead and give your feedback, your suggestions, your ideas, and work with them on that and then come back to them. The key on this is to have that conversation with them to try to get them back on track, but make it a weekly, bi-weekly thing where you're getting in their face and you're talking about it and working through it. That commitment will give them motivation to move forward and try to make things much better for them and their performance down the road. Haley asked the question, how do you deal with a person who holds a grudge against you but you didn't do anything? Those are some of my favorite interactions with people in the workplace. And what I wouldn't do is I would not step away from them. What you want to do is you want to tackle that with more communication as much as possible. So let them know that you're not going away, and that also gives you the opportunity to be a resource and to show that you're on their side and you're working on the same goals together. When they hold a grudge, when something happened, they might take time to get through that, so it can be a long-term thing. You can also try the nuclear approach on things, and that is just to pull them into a room and say, hey, I don't know what I did wrong or what happened that caused you to hold this grudge or have this opinion of me, but I want you to know it wasn't intended at all. Whatever it is, I'm on this team, you're on my team. I want to have fun at work. I want to be enjoyable at work. I want to be friends. So if you let me know what it is that I did wrong, I'll be happy to address it as much as possible. And so that would be the more nuclear option. But if you're shyer or you don't want to have that sort of direct conflict, then make sure you're still talking to them and make sure that you're reinforcing that you're on their team as much as possible. The last thing you want to do is step away from them, because then that judgment of theirs just gets to fester in a vacuum without any new impetus from you as to how you deal with things. Aurelis asked the question, I'm a very shy person. How can I show my leadership projection that doesn't show as shy or timid as I am? Aurelis, I would focus on a couple of things. So it's fine. I tell leaders, if you're looking for the next batch of leaders, don't forget to look at those people that don't chime up, that are more shy, that are more introverted, because they could be some of your best thinkers that are out there. And the way to do that is tackle one thing at a time. So you'll work on a progression, Aurelis. So try to work as a team member on one particular thing with one person that you don't know. So it's going to be uncomfortable to step out of this, but you want to be able to demonstrate that you get along and you work with all of the members on your team. The other thing that you want to do is show your boss that you're a resource to them. Now, if you're not comfortable walking into their office and saying, hey, you know what, do you need any help with anything? I'm finishing this up right now, and I can help Jane over here with her stuff, but I wanted to know if there was anything that you needed help with as well. If you don't want to make that personal face-to-face, you can always do that over email. If you're not comfortable, you can move up and down the communication ladder. The communication ladder is simply, texting, Skype, email, phone call, video conference, face-to-face. So you can move up and down into areas that you're more comfortable with, but make sure you're pressing yourself and you're making yourself uncomfortable on a daily basis. Make a challenge to yourself to do one thing that makes you uncomfortable every single day. It can be those little things. It can be sending out that email. It can be asking your team member whether they need help with something. You can always tell who the leader is in the organization by who everybody goes to when there's a problem or when they have a question. And you'd be surprised how many times that isn't the manager of a particular department, that's some person at the line level or some supervisor that everybody goes to. And so you can be that resource to your team members through email just as well as face-to-face. But start leveraging that, but keep leveraging it. It's a long-term thing. It's not a problem being shy. Everybody has to get over that at some point. I get nervous when I jump on these live sessions still before every single one of them. So you'll always be nervous. That won't ever go away. But just try to make those little steps forward whenever possible. Wesley, my next live broadcast is this upcoming Wednesday. I don't have the time in front of me, but you can check it out on my Facebook page. I'll be live on Wednesday. But I'm going to jump off right here. Those people that I didn't get a chance to get to your questions, I'll be going through the comment section on this live feed. It'll be up on my wall. So I'll look to answer some of your questions there as well as I can. But otherwise, I hope you guys had a great Monday. You had a great start to the week, and I will see you all on Wednesday. Take care. Have a good one.